Good morning, everybody. Nice to see everybody starting to join this session this morning. We'll give it another few seconds and then we'll formally get started with the session. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Jason Curtis and I'm one of the senior relationship managers at Jisc, focusing on higher education, and I'll be the chair for today's session. Right, quite a few people have joined now, so I'll go through some of the housekeeping if that's okay. So if you direct yourselves off towards the bottom of the screen, you'll see that there are two functions that you probably need to be most aware of. One of those being Q&A. So if you have any questions for the session today, would you kindly add your questions into that area? The events team and myself will be monitoring that area, and we will pick up on any of those questions at the end of the session. We are going to allow 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. There is a chat area which you can use to have chat within the cohort that's in the group today. But if you have any questions, can I urge you to put those into the Q&A session, please? So I'm delighted to introduce Richard Treves from the River Restoration Centre, hosted by the University of Cranfield. And he will be presenting a simple virtual field trips via online learning. So Richard, if I can hand over to you, I'll mute myself and turn my video off, but I will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A session. So over to you, Richard.
Okay, great stuff. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk about simple virtual field trips with online learning. I'm meaning field trips very broadly, not in the geo sense, which is my specialism, but in every sense where all kinds of multiple environments. I'm also presenting this. This is work I've done with Dr. Mark Naurer of the RRC as well. So, introduction. To set the scope of what we're talking about today, we're talking about learning observational skills using simple VR. We're not covering social interactions. There's all kinds of interesting things you can do with VR in terms of social learning and avatars. None of that today. This is very straightforward. When I started writing the talk, I was thinking that it was just going to be about photospheres in learning. But then I realized that it's intimately linked with how we use blending learning in the RRC. So I'm talking about that as well. So what I'm going to cover, one of the slides is about the problem. So I'm going to talk about observational skills and the multiple reasons we need to learn about observational skills. I'm going to cover why. So why are photospheres effective for teaching? I'm going to make an argument for that. I'm going to talk about what. I'm going to take you through our case study of one of the ways we use photospheres at the River Restoration Centre. I'll tell you briefly about how we do that, what software to look at if you're interested in doing it yourself, and then so what, I'll cover some takeaways. So first up, three topic areas for observational skills. So this is the problem. So why observational skills are important? Well, you can, in multiple environments, in learning situations, want to find or identify salient features or items. So the example I thought, and before I start, if you're not sure what I mean by photosphere, I'm talking about a 360 photo that you can navigate around, and it works exactly like Google Street View. So bodyguards protecting a celebrity, they are looking for a salient thing happening in a crowd to identify a threat. And why do you need a 360-degree photo for this? Well, the threat can come from any angles. They have to learn to watch in multiple directions at the same time. So that's one observational class of observational skills. Another one would be synthesizing multiple features in a scene. So I'm thinking reading the room skills in a meeting. In business studies, you may, in a meeting, notice defensive body language in several people. So in the picture I've got there, the woman on the left is being a bit defensive. The man on the far right is being less defensive. Noticing those cues, those body language cues, is the skill that you need to use in meetings. And the conclusion you might draw from this is the boss, who's the main figure sitting at the front there, is domineering. You'd sum all those things together and come to a conclusion. Why do you need a 360-degree photo for this? Well, if you're sat at a conference table, you need to track what everyone's doing all around you. I found an example on the web of a course about reading the room skills. At the end, I'll give you some links. You can download the PDF of the presentation and follow all the links that I've suggested here if you want to follow up with anything, and also provide you with notes, a note version. So the third set of observational skills is really our context from a single observational point surveying. So we have what's called the River Habitat Survey. We use it to record vegetation, river substrate, to track what ecological habitats there are in a river along a stretch of river. So obviously they've got those three reasons, three sets of observational skills that you may want to teach in a course. I'm sorry, I can't take, I'll take questions at the end if that's all right for the person who's raised their hand. An argument for the use of photospheres. Why? I'm talking here about reach and richness. So real life, often in an observational skill setup, is the best teaching. You've got really high reachness. So if you think about the security guard situation, the best way to teach someone is to put them in a crowd of actors and to have them acting out being a threat. That's very high richness. It's a really rich environment, but it's got low reach, is you're not reaching very many people. You could only have a small set of people being security guards in that environment. So you can see I've plotted life down there, high richness but low reach on the graph. If you have a web image, that's got great reach but low richness. So you could show someone an image of a crowd, but it's not a particularly rich environment, but it's instantly available on the web, all computers, all mobile devices. So a web image plots up there on the reach and richness graph. VR can be scaled and of course is much richer than a web image. So you can use VR with multiple people all at once. So I plotted VR there on the reach and richness graph. The problem with VR is it solves this problem quite nicely, but it's expensive in terms of the kit you need to use it, and most people don't have it available, and it's expensive to produce for the producers. So it's an order of magnitude more complex, I'd argue, than producing a photosphere. So when we talk about a photosphere, I think it's medium reach, richness and high reach. So photospheres just with Google Maps, you can see it on your mobile, you can see it on a computer. Its reach is pretty good. You probably need a big screen, so I didn't think it was as good as a web image, but the richness, it's providing you a view that's quite similar to being there in the field, in whatever the environment you're interested in. And it's cheap, it's easy to produce and easy to use. I can't go into the tech of actually how producing them, but it's just a camera with two fisheye lenses and you just take a photo. And it's very easy to upload. Right, off on a bit of a tangent here, but you'll understand how this all fits together. I've got a poll here, and what I want you to think about is, are you more like an octopus? Now, octopuses actually have brains in each of their tentacles. So they're very integrated brain body animals. C3PO, bit of a strange image. I was going to explain something further. I haven't got time to explain that. So it's just C3PO. He's an android. All his brains are in his head, and his body just does things that his head tells him. So a very separate brain body system. So on a scale of 1, which is the octopus, very integrated brain and body, and 5 is C3PO. Have a go at that, please. Interesting results coming through. No one is, oh, someone thinks like they're a complete octopus. That's good. Most of you are sort of plotting towards the C3PO end. Okay. Thanks for all those votes. I think we've got a slight, oh, I've got to share the results, haven't I? I do apologize. Yes, there's the results, and you can see that most people thought they were separate brain and bodies. I'm going to have a go at persuading you that you're more like an octopus. It's called embodied learning. So we've talked about reach and richness with a technology, virtual reality and life, and maybe photospheres have a special feature, embodied learning. So when you have your body involved in learning, it's often a much better experience. Proof of this, they've done an experiment where people learning maths, they let one set gesture as they did the test. They let the other set not gesture. The ones who gestured did better on the test. There's a famous experiment where they taught people things at the bottom of the sea, scuba diving, and then they tested some of them on the sea floor and some of them back on the beach. And the people who were taught and tested in the sea did better than the group that were taught in the sea and were tested on the sand. So what that tells you is that the environment, being taught in the environment in which you're tested, makes you better at doing it. It's all to do with being embodied, to being in a place. Another example is yawning in a group, a group of tired people sitting around, someone yawns, and then someone else will yawn. And you're not sitting there, whoever the person who just did the second yawn, they're not going, oh, George just did a good yawn. I'll have a go at that. It is just a reaction. It's a bodily reaction to being in a social group with other people yawning. So what I draw from all of these is the body is very important in learning if you can involve it. This is an opening field. It's come quite recently, which is why probably most of you haven't heard about it. But it's very interesting, and it's all to do with what we can do with brain scans now to see how brains are working in this way. But we need to practice skills in real life if possible. Okay, this is the tangent bit of the talk because I'm going off on another tangent now. I hate the word immersion when applied to VR. And the reason I do that is when people describe their VR use in teaching, it can be extremely powerful, it can be extremely good. But often they just say, oh, yeah, so we get the students and they're immersed. And that's the end. And it's like, no, 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 that's the beginning, is what is the experience that they're having in the immersed environment. So I've just said embodied is good for learning. Now I'm saying, but you still have to go on from that. That's still true, but you have to go on from that. So I'm talking about you need to design the experience of learning in VR, not just the place. It's not enough just to design a virtual place and drop people into it. And so, put it another way, what are students doing in your virtual reality learning, not where they are virtually? So, drawing all this together, the embodied thing and the capabilities of 360 photos, what I'm suggesting is you learn theory via photospheres and then practice in real life. That's really blended learning. So you do the photospheres, you study anywhere, anytime with a computer on the web. It's a semi-embodied experience, I would argue. I'm not sure about that. But real life is the best embodied experience. So practice with photospheres and then practice with real life is a very powerful combination. And that's what we did. So let's talk about the case study, River Habitat Survey course by the River Restoration Centre. This is the what section. So we're talking about mixing photospheres and real life fieldwork. So how do we teach this course? Well, the training, which I've got a link to there, it takes 4 weeks to complete the theory part on the VLE. There's interactive video lectures using H5P. You can have a look at those if you're interested. That's not what this talk is about. And then we've got photosphere activities. And these are teaching the principles of recognizing forms in rivers that you will need to survey. So I've got a little video here of the Google Earth environment and our photospheres. You'll see there's a stepper at the bottom left there. That flies you from location to location. This is in Google Earth. And it also flies you down into a photosphere. You can see we're in a photosphere there, or it flies you into another photosphere. Where in the photospheres, we need our delegates to explore what's going on. They can see a bar in the middle of the river there. That's a depositional feature. If you zoom in there on the bank, that's an erosional feature. So there's something really interesting going on with this river because it's depositional and erosional in this location. So that's what they should be learning from this. Having done the photosphere activity, they get video feedback on what they should have learned and what they should have recognized. And that 3-step that you can see there on the slide, 1, 2, 3, we'll repeat that 5 times with 5 photosphere activities supported by video lectures and feedback. When they've done all that, then they get to practice actual surveying. And this is in H5P instead. So if I play the video for this, you can see it's a photosphere. I can navigate around. You can see the vegetation, that's downstream. You can see from the tag. There's me, and that's upstream. And then you can see the vegetation. You can see the trees above. And then we move to another photosphere. Now, unfortunately, it sends you the wrong way, so it's a bit disorientating. You're now facing back at the river. That's why I put the tags in so people don't get disorientated. And then they can see the vegetation underfoot. That's part of the survey. Again, the trees above. And then they're moving to another photosphere. Again, it's pushed you back the wrong way. That's unfortunate. But what I want to show you now is actually the base of the river, what's in the bed, and what it's made up of is silt. And that's part of the survey that they need to observe and write down and fill in on their form. So this is for them to practice their form doing a survey across a transect of a river as they'll do in real life in the real survey. Okay, so that's the teaching. Then they have a Teams discussion to discuss any issues they have. And this replaces what used to be 2 days of PowerPoint presentation in a classroom environment. And what we've done, I think, works a whole lot better. And both versions are followed by 3 days, multiple sites in the field, 2 days actually practicing the finer points of doing surveying on real rivers. And the last day is a practical test and a written test of theory. So the advantages of photospheres in this blended approach, it's self-paced learning for the first 4 weeks. Delegates are almost all doing jobs, so it's easy to fit around their other activities. We, as tutors, can track their progress in the VLE by seeing what they've completed and what they haven't. A bit of feedback here. Google Earth exercises were useful in giving us real-life experience of a river environment, so they appreciated the Google Earth activities. A lot of them found it difficult to use. I think that's kind of intrinsic in the fact that you're moving around 3 dimensions and it's disorientating popping into these photospheres and popping out of them if you don't know what you're doing. I'm still trying to address this with further tutorials to help them get navigational skills. The blended learning is extremely handy because you have 2 nights of accommodation in the field rather than 4 nights. So that's the advantages of the blended and photosphere approach. Technical requirements, how do we do this? So what I've shown you is Google Earth, which is free and allows you to import photospheres, which people can move around. As I said, it does produce navigational problems that I still haven't managed to iron out. It now requires an API, so they've made it more difficult to get your photospheres in, but it is still possible, and you get a map environment in Google Earth if you manage this. H5P, the virtual Tour 360 feature, which comes free in most VLEs. There's a link to it there. That allows you to produce the link to photospheres. So that was the actual test where they did the survey. And you can put tags in the photospheres, which is not possible in Google Earth. And you can mix photos and photospheres. So you can have three photospheres, say, and then a map showing just where they've been, which will really help with the navigation, them understanding where they are and not feeling disorientated if you put a plan and a map use in. Paid for is Pano 2 VR, open source links there if you want to follow it through. My takeaways, photospheres can be an effective technique for teaching observational skills, avoiding issues of real life environment teaching. When using any VR, simple or complex, I think you should focus on designing the student experience, not the virtual place. And finally, embodied learning, this new field that's developing, suggests we should combine photospheres and real life in blended learning if this is possible. That's me.
Well, Richard, that was an excellent, very insightful presentation. Thank you very much. We've got one question in the Q&A section rather, from Alison. And I noticed that she posted earlier on about how this could be used in terms of archaeology field trips. The question is, what has the feedback been from students like? How does it compare to real life experience for them?
We haven't specifically collected feedback. We collect feedback about all our courses generally. And as I said, reflecting that one that I put up, they said they appreciated what they were learning and they enjoyed it. That's not measuring their actual learning, of course, which I think is sensible and would be sensible to do. But yes, it is quick and simple to produce and other feedback we had was about the navigational issues, but generally, yes, it's been good feedback, but we haven't specifically asked about it, I think is the answer.
Brilliant, thank you. There is a comment in the chat from Sophia referencing phase one habitat survey. So, Sophia, if you'd like to post a question in the Q&A section, that would be fantastic. While we're waiting to see if that happens, I've got a question for you, Richard. So, how did you measure the impact of 360 photospheres on student engagement and learning outcomes compared to traditional field trips? So you've obviously talked about the technology you've used today. So how is that compared to traditional field trips and the learning outcomes?
Well, I think I can compare those two case studies that we had with the training, as in the original, everything was done on PowerPoint for 2 days. And my colleague Mark said when he's very used to teaching this and he runs the field version of the course. And he said when the delegates came into the field, having done our new training with the photospheres, they were much more switched on. They knew far more. They had much better knowledge of what they were supposed to be doing, and they were much more advanced than usual after following the PowerPoint presentations. So I think it certainly beats PowerPoint presentations in terms of a teaching technique.
No, I can totally get that. As a visual learner myself, I totally get that. That would be the case. There's another question from Alison. What are your next steps for development of this tool? What's your wish list, which is quite a relevant one as we're getting towards Christmas. So, what's your Christmas wish list for 360 photospheres?
I think the next step probably is to move from Google Earth to putting it in H5P because it's much more controllable. And I think there's less navigational issues. So if I had the time, I'd probably move from Google Earth into the photospheres. But I do think, and I am watching virtual reality more generally and waiting for it to leave this complexity point because I do think it's going to get a lot more simple. And then you can get ever richer experiences without investing hugely in the tech and in the tech knowledge to produce them in the first place. And when that happens, I think that's a wish list as well, is to involve um, more immersive, more realistic environments.
Okay, that's excellent. Excellent. So I can't see there are any more questions. Oh, one's just popped up, but I think that's in the chat pane potentially. No, I think it's more of a comment in the chat pane, which people can pick up on afterwards. So, Richard, one more question has come through. How have you used photospheres with VR headsets?
We haven't, is what we do is we have
Okay.
VR. It's on your computer screen, so you just go into the photospheres and on your computer screens you navigate around it. Um, Shaylee Minoka at the Open University did a very interesting experiment, I thought, and she had what's called Google Cardboard, which is you put a phone in a cardboard, and it was cardboard originally with a couple of lenses in, and it produces a simple virtual reality. And again, it's photospheres, but instead of having to navigate around with using your mouse on the screen, you move your head, and the photosphere moves around with you. And she took people in the field and showed them a British forest and then showed them a tropical forest using the photospheres and got them to generate inquiry questions. And she got some really interesting results. Is they generated more inquiry questions. They were asking more interesting learning type questions when they used the photospheres than not, which is very clever because it's getting around this problem, I think, of immersion. It's not just giving people photospheres and saying, did you like it? As of course they'll say they liked it, they enjoyed it, but she actually did something with it. She got them to generate questions, and then she measured the question use. So that's an example I know of using simple VR with photospheres.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. I can't see any more questions coming through at this point. So it's really down for me to say, Richard, thank you very much for a great and fascinating session today. You've shown some real insights into this area, and thank you
Jason,
for speaking today. Um,
Jason,
yes.
can you put the links to the presentation in the chat?
We'll definitely do that for you. The events team will do that for us in a second or two. So we'll make sure that happens.
That's great.
I'd just like to thank everybody else virtually taking part and joining in today and interacting through questions and through the chat pane. Um, and yes, we'll make sure those links are available. One last mention really is that we've got a fantastic event coming up in March, which is the 10th and the 11th of March at the ICC in Birmingham. It's DigiFest. You can attend face to face for the 2 days, one day if you wish, or you can indeed attend online. Registration is now open, and can I urge everybody that's here today to have a look on the Jisc website at the events page, and or just Google DigiFest 2026 and have a look at the program. It's going to be a fantastic event, like it always is, and we look forward to seeing you here. But again, Richard, thank you very much for taking part in today's session, and I'll leave it to the events team to sort out the links, etc., for the presentation, etc.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Feel free to exit the session when ready.